everybody. But Garrett did a great job of peeling off. This is the first team, preseason team. That's an unbelievable graphic. Garrett, great job with that. From Daniels to Richard Reese, the freshman who was spectacular last year. There's Neal, who's spectacular. You have Worthy, who has some things to prove. Last year may have had the hand injury. Sanders, who was a beast at tight end. And then there's the offensive line, including Cooper Beebe. You mentioned him. The sophomore and Kelvin Banks. And then Zach Frazier, among the others. Leave that up, Garrett. Just a couple of nuggets there, guys, from the first team. And I did not do this team, but not one of those players is from an incoming team. Yeah, and I think that it's because BYU. I'm sorry, there's Brigham Young. Yeah, okay, good. The Brigham Young offensive lineman in Kingsley. So that's good. So a couple of nuggets from the first team preseason poll on offense.
There's 3 Kansas players on the Big 12 first team all offense, which I don't know when the last time or if ever that's ever happened.
In basketball.
But outside of that, I don't know that that's happened very often. I think, good for Kingsley Suamataya, and if I'm mispronouncing that, I promise I'll get that right sooner rather than later. I'm big on pronunciations, but good to see one of the new schools get at least a member there, and he's a future NFL guy, so I'm sure that's probably where a lot of people looked around and oh, he's a mock draft guy. He probably deserves to be on here, but good player. Good to see them represented. I think Richard Reese, his first-team running back, I don't know about that, honestly. I know he had a great year last year, but I don't know that he's going to be Baylor's main running back this year all the time. So to be the first-team running back in the conference, I don't know that I would go that far on my end of things. But
could it be because some other teams, Craig, have a running back by committee, and Baylor probably will too, but that we don't know the rotations yet?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think that, there's no Bijan to take up a spot that's just automatic. I don't know that Devin Neal's the second best running back or one of the 2 best running backs in the conference. I think he's a known thing, though, and he plays with Jalen Daniels. I mean, not to say he's not a good player, but I just think there's a lot of unknowns maybe about the running back spot across the Big 12 because those are 2 guys that it's like, oh, you looked at last year and what could carry over, kind of. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, with Richard Reese, great year as a freshman. Don't know how much he'll split up the carries this time around, but if he made all Big 12, that would be great news for Baylor, obviously.
And Kendry Miller's gone. TCU.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys gone.
Last year named
Eric Gray from Oklahoma's gone. Bijan's gone. Roshan's gone.
Deuce Vaughn's gone.
Yeah. So, last year, Deuce and Bijan, see ya. And, there's some really good guys who didn't make it because they had 2 studs that were pretty easy picks. So I do think there's that drop-off that you see there with Reese and Neal. Not to disrespect them in any way, but I don't know that I would bank good money that it'll be those 2 at the end of the year.
Yeah, I the only person on the first-team offense that I would question at all is Worthy, not because of his ability. By God, not because of his ability. He's got talent at the wazoo, but I do question his motor a little bit on that. And I think that was part of the issue last year. But if he's got that motor running, then yes, he's absolutely a first-team wide receiver.
I don't know if it's his motor. There's so many players and weapons they have. You could have used a couple of names right there. Craig mentioned Mitchell, but I think it's too early for that. And with Nayor back and healthy, among others, I just think he had, so much happened 2 years ago. He got a little banged up in his hand, and maybe, I'm not using the word pouted, but he just kind of went into a shell, and it just did not work out. And Ewers was not flawless. And so maybe that created a little bit of what happened with him last year. Bradley's a heck of a receiver as far as a body to throw to for Texas Tech and also Shuck.
Yeah, Oklahoma State's really puzzling to me. I don't think anybody quite knows what to think of them, but Presley's a good pick. I think wide receiver, you could have gone with a number of guys. We just named Texas has 2 other guys, but it's a little too early to go and peg them all Big 12 first team. But, Presley, Worthy, Bradley, that's a really good group. And I think that, Bradley's going to be a really problematic matchup for a lot of teams, just super athletic, got great size. Worthy, if he's on his game, and like you said, I think last year's was a combination of things. I think it was, things not going right, his hand, some big drops, just a lot of stuff that added up. So I would expect a big bounce back from him. There was all that talk about him possibly transferring just because things were sort of out of whack, and that didn't happen. So I would think that means that anything that rumor or not, got smoothed over, and he's going to be locked in, ready to go, and should be great for them, and what should be an awesome wide receiver.
Banks and Beebe, no-brainers, would think, on the preseason. Now let's go to the defense. Let's go to the defense. You see, there's the logos jump out at you, and there's not one that just dominates. There's not one player from Baylor on the first-team preseason defense. There is Cincinnati from the new incoming 4, and that's nice to see. So you have the Downs and Williams and Murphy, of course, who at one point was committed to Baylor, the defensive lineman from DeSoto. Hutchins is a Texas Tech. Then you look at the linebackers, Oliver, Hodges, who's fantastic with TCU, Ford, and then you have all the rest of the defensive backs, including Kobe Savage, who I think is fantastic, Kendall Daniels from Oklahoma State, and then Josh Newton. Couple of notes. We got a guest at 325 and Ivan Maisel.
I love that Cincinnati has a guy named Don Corleone as a father, as a fan of The Godfather. But, yeah, I mean, obviously Jalen Ford. I was glad to see TJ Tampa on here from Iowa State. He's a really, really good player. Kobe Bryant very famously had the big pick against Texas a couple years ago. And I think, maybe people he faded into the background a little bit with that Texas offense, but in spite of the defensive woes that Kansas had last year, he is certainly a bright spot on there. So he stood out to me as one of the picks as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really solid group, strong linebacker group. I just see some debate on, Colin Oliver and whether he should count as a true linebacker, more of a guy who's, kind of on the line a lot. But, either way, you want to slice it. That's a good group. Secondary is really strong. And the defensive line, I think, will be really interesting. Murphy's quickly become an impact guy for Texas. You just see the talent. You see why Baylor wanted him. You see why Texas wanted him so bad. Hutchins is him and Bradley, those are two freaky guys for Texas Tech that, probably have some NFL futures ahead of them. And, not one team really dominating, like you said. A couple teams getting left out, but I do think Cincinnati with Corleone, if they were going to get a guy, that would have been the guy to bet on them getting on one of these two teams. So, yeah, good to see him on there.
Here's a quick note from Justin R. Last time KU had 3 players on an all Big 12 offensive team was 2007. That was the Todd Reesing year when they went to the Orange Bowl. He was the quarterback, Brandon McAnderson, running back, and Marcus Henry at wide receiver. So, Justin, thanks for that. We appreciate that and nugget from you. Paxton, Kobe Bryant is elite. And so there you are with the preseason media team. And honestly, looking at the names, there's like about 33% of them that I would have had, and the other ones would have been really hard for me to come to a consensus on what to do. Now, Big 12 Media Days.